Nicholas Howson, who's a professor of law at the Michigan Law School. And Nicholas was formerly managing partner of the China practice of international law firm Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton and Garrison. And we welcome him to the program this morning. Nice to see you, Nicholas. Lots of news coming from China.
Morning.
Everyone's watching the Google case, Rio Tinto. I'm going to first start off with Rio Tinto because that 3-day trial ends today. And for some, looking at how these court proceedings have taken place, it seems pretty brief if you want a fair trial. Some are saying there's already a verdict in mind.
Yeah, I'm actually quite positive on one side on the Rio Tinto court case, and that's because it's part of a larger enforcement action against an industry or a trade that I think many people understand was deeply corrupt. There was a lot of bribery, a very unlevel playing field. So from one angle, the decision of the Chinese prosecutors to go after actors in that trade is a positive. Another thing that's positive, I believe, is the way that the People's Procurate, which is the prosecution, won the day over the state security institutions. As you may recall, originally the charge was theft of state secrets, which implicated a whole different system of law. Therefore, it's positive generally that we have the case as it's appeared. Originally, also, it was very positive in that the people who were targeted were not just the Rio Tinto executives or employees, but also Chinese buyers in the steel mills. So that was all good. Now, fast forward a couple months, we're in a trial. Oh, sorry?
Let me ask you, Nicholas, you're talking about the positives of this case. We're looking at Stern Hu, who's an Australian national, and he has pled guilty to these bribery charges. He could be facing 5 to 15 years in prison. I'm not so sure he would call this positive.
Well, he might call it positive if he decided that he got something like a fair process. And that's where I was about to get to the negatives that are implicit in this situation, which is really lack of access to the public, lack of consular access to the actual trial, and perhaps a targeted prosecution against a PRC origin executive working for a foreign company in China. If we have any notion of equal application of the law and equal application of justice, we would expect to see other cases against some of the Chinese buyers, some of the officials at the state-owned enterprise steel mills. And we haven't seen that so far. So that is disturbing.
Mm-hmm. And what about these closed-door sessions? Obviously, people are, I guess in their respective countries, as an expat, as a foreigner, you actually see these trials conducted in the open for the public. So what do you think they're deliberating right now behind these closed doors? And do you think that might have an impact on the actual outcome?
Well, I can't speak to what's happening behind the closed doors, but I can speak to the closed doors. And I will assert that the justifications given by the Chinese government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for why these particular trials, whether it's on the bribery charge or on the commercial secrets charge, why they should be closed, don't really stand up to scrutiny. And I find it puzzling why the Australian government hasn't argued the law, both domestic Chinese law and treaty law, to bust their way into the courtroom proceedings to get better access.
Yeah, if China's going to talk about a fair and transparent trial, then open it up to the public. That's what some are saying. Let's quickly move on to Google's, Nicholas, because I don't have much time here. But what about this Google case? It looks like Google is basically setting up steps so they can shut down in the country. From I guess a law perspective, how do you see things playing out for this case? And what have you learned from this particular case study?
It's a fascinating case, both on the law and the politics and how institutions spin business development and then constraints on that business development. The interesting thing, I think, about the Google case is that Google went into China understanding that there would be censorship. That is Chinese law or Chinese regulation. What has changed today with respect to censorship? Absolutely nothing. So that causes me to believe that the bigger problem for Google was actually the hacking that they identified in December. And my understanding is that Google went to the Chinese government and said, can you promise us internet security? Same for other, sorry.
Okay, Nicholas, unfortunately, I'm out of time, but it was so nice talking to you today. Thank you for those insights. Nicholas Howson at the University of Michigan.